Hey guys, today we're doing another deck spotlight where one of you guys sends me in a deck and I go over it, critique it, just give some of my opinions on it. This deck was sent to me a while ago for the last ban list by the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro guys, and basically it's an artifact deck. Not doing too much, different from normal builds, a pretty standard build, but does, some other stuff, and I'll talk about that when I'm going over the deck. So he's running three of most of the staples. Labrys, always a good card to have. Failnaught, really, really good to reuse effects. Moralltach, always a great card, obviously very powerful. He's also running three Achilles Shield and three Scythe, which I wasn't running in my artifacts, so I'm kind of taking a look at this and trying to see the big point of this. Obviously, Scythe can be an interesting counter card, but depending on the situation, it might not be that useful. 2200 attack, though, is pretty nice. Achilles Shield is interesting to protect you from attacks, so you can load the field and guarantee you get out XYZs, which is interesting. I do prefer Aegis, which I will talk about in the side deck. He's also using three Caduceus, which is always good to use. Probably at two or three. Three is not completely necessary, but it's whatever you want. Gives him some additional draw power in this deck, which is nice. And then three Cardcar-D. Fine for this deck because most of the monsters you have are going to be set, so you can use Cardcar-D to get easy draw power. And then he's using one Honest, obviously in a light-based deck, very powerful. So for the spells, again, pretty typical for artifacts. Three Artifact Ignition, always a great card to have. Three Double Cyclone, again, a very powerful card for this deck. And three MST, very useful. Mage Power also can be pretty strong for this deck and can allow you to have some power even without an XYZ, which is kind of nice in case you don't have as much destruction as you need. For the traps, he's running three Artifact Sanctum, again, guaranteed to run this at 3 in any artifact base deck because it's so strong, and 2 Malevolent Catastrophe. Really crazy card in this deck to set up plays. I also forgot to mention, I have this at the end here, 3 Beagalltach. Again, just staple for this deck, not much to talk about there. So for his extra deck, he's going to be running 3 Durandal. I do recommend running this at 2 or 3. Very useful card. 2 Adreus, another really nice XYZ. 2 Tiras, another nice one. 2 King of Heavy Industry. Probably can run this at 1. It's up to him if he wants to run it at more, but 1 is probably enough for this card. Zenmaioh, obviously a very powerful card. I like to run it at 2, but I've seen people run it at 1, which is also fine. Obviously, you won't use it for your artifacts to destroy them, but blowing up your opponent's back row is very strong. And then 1 Gaia Dragon. I would greatly recommend running this at 2 or 3 because you're gonna run into this. You're gonna want to go into this after you use your materials, pretty much from any one of your XYZ. So definitely 2 or 3 for this. Utopia Ray Victory. I just don't think it's worth running in this deck without having Utopia as its material, so I would probably take that out. Volcasaurus, again, a really great level 5 XYZ. There's other 5 XYZs that I'll talk about. So overall, a pretty standard artifact deck. There's not too much to say. I'm concerned about Achilles Shield and Scythe, whether they're helping him that much. They might be. It's a deck type that I haven't played that much around with. I did a more standard build that doesn't use them. But it could definitely work, and I can see that limiting your opponent's ability. The only problem is getting them special summoned at exactly the right time in order to, keep your opponent from, destroying your artifacts. The thing about these guys is you need to get them destroyed, before your opponent starts special summoning or before they start attacking your artifacts. So you need to have things set up in the right way to make it work at the right time, if that makes any sense. So that's my only concern for those cards. The other cards you can kind of activate whenever you want, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about limiting your opponent at the start of the turn with them. So just some ideas I want to throw out there. Cards from the Sky is also an interesting one to get some draw power, but he has Cardcar-D, which also works. This is just a different thing you could do if you want to. You're obviously going to be skipping the battle phase anyway with Cardcar-D, so this is just something else that you can do instead of having to summon out Cardcar. I definitely recommend Pleiades. Pleiades is pretty much staple in artifacts. Definitely run this at 2 or 3. Extremely powerful card. Shark Fortress is also really good for setting up OTKs, so I really like having at least one of him in the deck. Some other monsters you can consider running. Aegis, I think, is really nice to protect. I really think with all the destruction people have nowadays, it's really nice to have something like Aegis to protect you from that. Nova Summoner, a really nice one if you want to, summon things without having to worry about back row in order to do that. I think that's kind of nice to bring out, like Beagalltach whenever you want or something like that. I think that could be very useful, especially, when you have cards like Achilles Shield. There's also another alternative to Malevolent Catastrophe, Absorbing Jar, which can be a really nice one because you also get draw power. I really like this card for artifacts, so definitely think about throwing that one in. There's a couple new artifacts. Lancea is a really interesting kind of counter card for banishing, which I find this card can be really, really good tech against certain decks, so maybe you might want to consider running that. Obviously, this was for the last ban list, so he hasn't considered those new cards yet. But overall, I really like the deck. Again, pretty standard artifacts. There's not too much to say here. Not to hate on him at all, there just isn't really any like special creativity. It's just a pretty standard build, and I imagine it'll work well. My only concern is, putting in certain artifacts and making sure they're always ready to be usable. And I like artifacts in general, so I'm sure you can find some answers for this deck, along with a lot of the new stuff that's currently being added. But thank you to the YGOPro guys for sending me this deck. If you would like to see their channel, I will link to it. And also, if you guys have any decks you want me to showcase, maybe you have a cool deck idea, some creative deck, send it to me. I'll show it off on my channel. I'd really love to see more decks from people, especially with all the new archetypes that are just recently coming out. But that's about it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.